Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I bring you the next episode of the story about LyTuDiep and CEO James. In the episode before the last one, James began to feel uneasy as the activities in his father's warehouse grew increasingly suspicious. A series of unusual signs appeared one after another, making it impossible for him to ignore them any longer. At that moment, Lynn, his loyal subordinate and the only person James trusted completely, risked everything to sneak into the restricted area and brought back important confidential documents. Thanks to those files, James slowly uncovered the truth behind the dangerous plans he had never known about. Not wanting Diep and Little Nhi to be dragged into the chaos, James was forced to make a painful decision: to stay away from the mother and child while conducting his investigation and protecting them from afar. He watched over every step Diep took, making sure she was safe, yet he couldn't appear in front of her, afraid that even a moment of carelessness would reveal his weakness to his father. Meanwhile, Diep lived in constant worry. James disappeared without a single explanation, leaving her heart weighed down with anxiety. Little Nhi asked every day with her big round eyes, "Mommy, where is Uncle James?" A question that only made Diep's heart ache even more. The tension escalated when a mysterious black car began tailing James for days. Every meter he drove was watched, as if someone wanted to warn him that they already knew what he was investigating. James understood very clearly. The confrontation between him and the man known as his father, the one he should have been able to trust the most, was only just beginning. Stay tuned for today's episode to find out what happens next. In the days that followed, James could barely sleep even a full hour. Every night dragged on endlessly, feeling like a slow, torturous march. His eyes were always red, dark circles etched deeply beneath them, yet he forced himself to stay strong, because he knew he wasn't allowed to be weak. During the day, James still appeared at the company as the perfect CEO: crisp shirt, confident steps, a calm expression so composed that no one could ever guess what he was truly facing. Meetings continued, contracts were signed, and his words remained sharp and precise. But beneath that mask of composure was a completely different man. Because when the city lights began to dim, when the tall buildings glowed only with a few scattered windows, when the world finally grew quiet, James returned to his true self. A man silently following the traces of his own father, relentlessly piecing together every fragment of truth under suffocating pressure. He needed documents. He needed evidence. He needed every piece of the puzzle in order to stand before his father without trembling, to force him to stop, to keep him from interfering with Diep's life, and most importantly, to prevent his return to her from becoming yet another power game. James understood clearly: without enough reasons, without enough proof, without enough weight, he could never protect the woman he loved. And with just one small mistake, Diep and Little Nhi would be the first to suffer. Throughout that exhausting journey, Lynn, his most loyal subordinate and the one he trusted as his right hand, was always by his side. He appeared on stormy nights, carrying a laptop and stacks of rain-soaked documents. He appeared in rushed midnight meetings. He appeared even when James stood in a pitch-black room, so exhausted he could no longer feel his legs. "The data you need. I've retrieved most of it," Lynn said quietly, placing the thick stack of files on the table. His voice was soft yet steady, enough to anchor James amidst the chaos. "Once the time is right, we'll be able to stop him." James looked at the silent pages in front of him. For a brief moment, his heart felt a small release, a faint lightness after weeks of crushing tension. But that feeling was quickly replaced by a familiar emptiness and loneliness. Because no matter how busy the work was, no matter how dangerous the investigation became, the longing for Diep and Little Nhi surged through him like powerful waves, one after another, never stopping. If he closed his eyes, Diep's gentle smile appeared instantly. If he took a deep breath, he could almost hear Little Nhi's baby voice calling his name. Those memories warmed him, yet they hurt him just as deeply, making him want to drop everything and run back to them. But he couldn't. At least, not yet. And that inner conflict was what made every one of James's nights feel longer than a lifetime. Even though he kept reminding himself to stay patient, to wait for the right moment, to remain calm until everything was truly safe. James's heart acted like a stubborn child, refusing to obey any order from his rational mind. The more he urged himself to be composed, the stronger the longing grew. The more he tried not to think about Diep, the clearer and sharper her image, and little knees, appeared in his mind, haunting him with painful intensity. Every time he closed his eyes, his chest tightened as if an invisible hand were squeezing it. On those endless nights, no matter how buried he was in overwhelming work, no matter how the investigation drained him until his body felt like collapsing, in the end, when he stood alone in a dark room lit only by the dim glow of his phone screen, James became just a man who missed his family so much he could barely breathe. He missed Diep. He missed her gentle eyes, her soft voice, her calm presence beside him. He missed the way she lowered her head with a small smile, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear whenever she felt shy. Just thinking about it made his heart soften for a brief second, before tightening painfully because he couldn't be with her. He missed little Nhi. He missed her big trusting eyes, the way she held out her hands asking to be carried whenever she saw him. He missed her tiny fingers clutching the collar of his shirt, the bright laughter she let out whenever he took her for a walk. His entire world had once been wrapped in those little moments, and now, all he had left were memories he held on to in the dark. His longing was so overwhelming that every night, James would quietly open the photo folder of the mother and child. He would swipe through the images again and again, dozens of times, as if looking long enough could somehow fill the emptiness in his heart. But the more he looked, the more his eyes burned. The tighter his chest felt, as if it might split open. And then one evening, unable to endure it any longer, James drove to Diep's neighborhood. The streets were strangely quiet, the streetlights casting faint patches of yellow on the pavement, the night wind blowing cold through the trees. Everything was too peaceful, completely opposite from the chaos inside him. James parked in a hidden corner. He didn't step forward. He couldn't. He wasn't allowed to. Instead, he stood behind the wall near the gate, half his body swallowed by darkness. It was far enough that no one would notice him, but close enough to see every light glowing inside the small house he once considered the safest place in the world. In the kitchen, under the warm yellow light, Diep's silhouette appeared. Maybe she was washing dishes, or preparing vegetables, or making milk for Nhi, James couldn't tell. He just knew that every movement she made was painfully familiar. Just 1 second of watching her, and he could already guess how she was feeling, because he had watched her 100 times, 1,000 times. And little Nhi was playing in the backyard. That small yard was once the place where she ran straight into his arms every time he came home. The memory struck him so hard his throat tightened. The air turned dense around him, forcing him to lean against the wall to steady himself. In that moment, every memory he had with the mother and child surged back all at once, so intensely it felt like he was reliving everything. His heart pounded, his eyes burned, and he bit his lip hard to stop the sob from escaping. Finally, no matter how much he tried to hold it in, a whisper slipped out of him, choked and trembling. Diep. Nhi. I miss you so much. Just one sentence, so soft that even the night wind could swallow it. Yet strong enough to make his fingers tremble with pain. So close, yet he could not step forward. He could see them, but couldn't touch them. He could call their names, but couldn't let them hear his voice. And that helplessness, that cruel distance, was the thing that tormented him the most. James slowly backed deeper into the darkness, step by careful step, barely daring to make a sound. He hid himself behind the low shrubs along the wall, trying to melt into the stillness of the night. His hand tightened until his knuckles turned white, and he forced his breaths to stay quiet, even stopping completely for a few seconds just so he wouldn't be noticed. He only wanted to see the mother and child for a moment. Just a moment, and then he would leave. But just as his whole body tensed like a stretched string, ready to slip away, little Nhi suddenly froze. She had been holding a small toy, but her hand slowly fell to her side. Her big round eyes stared into the empty air ahead of her, blinking a few times before she tilted her head, as if sensing something familiar, something warm, something she missed deeply. In that instant, time felt strangled. Even the wind brushing through the leaves seemed to stop for a heartbeat. James held his breath. His heart pounded so loudly he feared the sound itself would betray him. He knew children were incredibly perceptive, especially a child who had been so attached to him. Just one heartbeat later. "Uncle Jamius." The tiny voice burst out suddenly, loud, clear, and powerful enough to shatter the frozen silence. James flinched, cold sweat breaking across his palms. Before he could step out, or cover her mouth, or do anything at all, Nhi had already dashed forward. Her tiny feet pounded against the grass, stumbling here and there but filled with determination. She tripped once on a tree root, nearly falling, but pushed herself up and kept running, faster, stronger, as if slowing down even a second would make him disappear again. James panicked and stepped back instinctively. He raised a trembling finger to his lips, whispering urgently. "Shoo. Nhi, sweetheart, keep your voice down." His voice shook. Partly because he feared Diep would hear. Partly because he feared his father's people might be watching. But more than anything, because of the overwhelming emotion crashing through him. None of his whispered pleas mattered, because in the very next blink, Nhi threw herself into his arms. The force of her small body colliding with him made his knees bend slightly. Her thin arms wrapped tightly around his neck, holding on as if she were clinging to the entire world she thought she had lost when he disappeared. Her face pressed against his chest, her breath hot and trembling. "I missed you. You were gone so long. I thought you didn't want me anymore." Each broken, halting word sounded like she was holding back tears with all her might. James froze completely. For a long second, he couldn't move. His arms moved on their own, instinctively wrapping around her, a hug he had forced himself to stay away from for so many days. His eyes reddened instantly. Not because of sorrow, but because this little girl had just struck the softest, most vulnerable place in his heart, the place he tried hardest to protect. That small, warm embrace tore through all the pain, longing, and torment he had endured. He lowered his head, struggling to steady his breathing as he felt the trust, the absolute dependence, the child placed in him. In the quiet of the night, only the trembling breaths of little Nhi and the strong yet wounded heartbeat of James echoed, blending into one, softening even the darkness around them. In the kitchen, Diep was cooking, the rising steam tinting her cheeks a warm pink. The rhythmic tapping of the knife against the cutting board blended with the gentle bubbling of the soup simmering on the stove. Every now and then, she tilted her head, listening, waiting for little Nhi's laughter, waiting for the familiar clacking of her toy like every other day. But today, there was nothing. No humming. No tiny footsteps. No cheerful babbling. Just silence. A silence so unusual it sent a chill down Diep's spine. She set the knife down abruptly, wiped her hands on her apron, her heartbeat racing with a sudden surge of dread. She hurried toward the porch. "Nhi? Nhi? Where are you?" Her voice shook the first time and cracked the second out of rising fear. Diep searched the front yard. She bent down to check under the stone bench. Looked at the little swing. Looked at the corner where Nhi liked to play with the dirt. Nothing. She turned and ran to the side yard. Every step felt like stepping on sharp stones, painful, hot, full of panic. "Nhi? Where are you? Nhi?" The wind rustled the small chime hanging near the porch, and the soft jingling only made her more uneasy. And when she reached the backyard, Diep froze. Her body locked in place for a moment that felt endless. There, in the dim shadow between the tree and the wall, was a tall figure she thought she would never see again. James. He stood there, silent, almost merging with the darkness. But his arms were wrapped tightly around little Nhi, the child who was crying uncontrollably into his chest. That moment, all strength drained from Diep's body. Her legs weakened. Her knees nearly collapsed. She had to grab the doorframe to keep herself from falling. She stood there, unable to move. Shock, relief, fear, longing, everything mixed into one overwhelming tide that stole her breath. Her eyes reddened, so fast she didn't notice it happening. Tears spilled out, large, hot drops, falling before she even had time to lift a hand to stop them. Fast. Heavy. Flooding out as if every emotion she had suppressed was rushing out at once. She clamped a hand over her mouth, afraid that even a small sob would break her completely. James. You're alive. Her voice wasn't even a voice anymore. It was broken breath, shattered words, trembling, choked, incomplete. James looked at her. His eyes darkened, deep with the weight of pain he had been hiding for days. In them was affection, longing, helplessness, and the torment he had forced himself to endure. His chest tightened. He inhaled softly, trying to steady his tone. "I'm all right." Each word fell heavy into the air. "I can't come back yet, but please wait for me." He lowered his head slightly, holding Ni closer, as if gathering strength from the warmth of her embrace. "I love you. And I will come back." Those words were both a blade, and the medicine she had been waiting for all this time. Diep broke down. No more holding back. No more pretending to be strong. No more faking peace while putting her child to sleep alone every night. Her tears poured out uncontrollably. Her fear, her relief, her anger at him leaving without a word, all blended into one overwhelming rush that shook her whole body. She looked at James. At little Ni sobbing in his arms. And her heart, bruised, exhausted, but still loving, softened, ached, and loved him all over again. As if it had never stopped. James lowered his head, one hand gently resting on little Ni's soft hair. His hand trembled slightly, not out of fear, but because of the pain crushing his chest. "Sweetheart, don't cry." His voice was hoarse, each word sounding as if it had been dragged out from the deepest part of his heart. "I have to go. But I promise. I will come back to you." The moment those words left his lips, little Ni tightened her arms around him. Her tiny arms wrapped around his neck, trembling from sobbing and from losing her breath. "No." Her cry cracked in her throat. "I won't let you go. I won't." She clung to him with all the strength a small child could have, as if letting go meant Uncle James would disappear forever. Her little shoulders shook, and her hot tears soaked through his shirt. James closed his eyes. His breathing hitched, threatening to choke him. In that moment, he wished life were simple. He wished he could take the mother and child far away from all this. He wished he were just an ordinary man, not someone trapped in a pit of secrets and danger created by his own father. But he knew. Even one moment of weakness could throw Diep and Ni straight into danger. James opened his eyes, his pupils red, and held the little girl's shoulders gently. "Ni, listen to me." His voice was soft but firm. "I have to leave now. If I stay, your grandpa will find out. And your mother will be in danger." Ni cried even harder, burying her tiny face into his neck, sobbing until her lips turned purple. James slowly, painfully, pried her fingers off his shirt, one by one. Every finger he removed felt like another cut straight into his heart. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, a kiss as soft as a passing breeze, but painful enough to steal his breath. "You must listen to your mother." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, sweetheart." Ni burst into even louder cries, cries that tore through the quiet night like shattered glass. Diep rushed forward and pulled her daughter into her arms just as Ni tried to throw herself at James again. She held the child tightly, her shoulders shaking as she cried with her, tears soaking into the little girl's hair. James stepped back. Then back again. Each step felt like stepping on shards of his own broken heart, heavy, agonizing, suffocating. Diep looked up at him. Her eyes were swollen, red, filled with desperation and helpless love. She wanted to say something, but her lips only trembled, no words forming. James turned away. His shadow stretched across the ground and slowly dissolved into the night, like a lonely streak of darkness swallowed by a vast, silent world. The wind brushed past him, icy cold. just like the longing inside him that clawed at him piece by piece. Right before disappearing completely, he stopped for half a second, not turning back, only speaking in a low voice filled with love and warning. "Diep. Don't tell anyone I was here. For the safety of all three of us." And without waiting for a reply, James walked straight into the night. Alone. Burdened. And torn apart by a longing he could no longer touch. That night, when James's figure finally disappeared into the darkness, the backyard suddenly felt unbearably empty. Diep held little Nhi tightly, both mother and child frozen in broken sobs. The wind drifted beneath the eaves, carrying the lingering echo of James's final promise. A promise beautiful, painful, and fragile, so fragile it felt like it might shatter with the slightest touch. Diep stood there for a long time, staring into the darkness where he had vanished, as if hoping he might come back just one more time. But the night remained silent. Only the faint warmth of their brief reunion lingered on her arms. Would his promise, "I will come back," survive the danger closing in around him? Would the confrontation between James and his father drag Diep's life into even more storms? And could the little family they were trying so hard to protect ever truly be whole again? All will be revealed in the next episode. If you're following this story, feel free to leave a comment below. Your words are the motivation that helps me continue creating more emotional and exciting chapters. See you in the next episode.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Lên mình tiếp tục. Chào tất cả mọi người nha, tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những video sau. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều vì đã theo dõi video của mình nha.